What? What's this bloody good for the man of strike? You threatened this man with a strike? I told Jerry that if the committee thinks... I never heard anything like it in my life. Who's involved? Give me their names. No one's going to hold this one to ransom. I'll suspend a lot of you. Who else is involved? The whole team, except Jeff Haywood. It'll give him a chance to show what a real champion he is.
I'm interested in the process of creating drama that involves actors for performance, be it in film, television or on stage. But I can remember when I was 17 or 18 going and seeing a very dynamic production of a contemporary play and thinking it was an impossibility to ever think that an Australian play would be up there on that stage being appreciated by our own audience, and that was the depth of the cultural cringe. And there seemed to be an implicit assumption that nothing of worth would spring out of this culture because we were a colonial culture, we had our roots in Europe. There didn't seem anything for this great continent to say dramatically. Apart from occasional one-off flukes, there was no Australian writing to speak of because it wasn't actively being looked for. I was always an obsessive writer from an early age. My mother, exaggerating greatly, says by the age of 4 I was writing stories. She's still got some fragments there of stuff I used to do. I just loved the act of writing, but it was a secret dream that I kept to myself because of this feeling that if you ever told anyone, they would think you were crazy, an egomaniac, or quite off your head. So it was something I kept inside, and I did the normal program thing that young males did in the 50s. They went to school, ended up with a science matric or HSC as it's now called, and graduated as a mechanical engineer because this is what males did. I have enormous gaps in my literary education, compounded by the fact that I spent 5 years of my life studying the way fluids behave in conduits, and I was obsessive about human behaviour, what made some people different than others, what was the basis of personality, what was the basis of social behaviour, why do people interact in groups like they do. All of those questions were addressed in a very good psychology course I did, and I found that symbiotic with the writing obsession, this obsession to know what makes people tick. I tried to write novels. In my early 20s, I wrote thousands upon thousands of turgid words, but I found the theatre much more exciting, writing for reviews, even just going to the theatre and seeing plays interacting immediately with audiences. In the late 60s, some small theatres sprung up around Melbourne and some in Sydney. One very important one was opened by a woman called Betty Burstall, who'd been to New York and had seen the off-Broadway and the off-Broadway theatres, dedicated to finding new writing.
And so when it was time to come back to Australia, I thought it would be, well, I wanted to go on going to a place like that, and a place like that didn't exist. So I thought, okay, I'll have a shot at starting something like this. Actors and writers and directors working for nothing. The hat was passed around and that was shared out between all the people acting. It was simply an opportunity for them to do the sort of thing they wanted to do. It was totally non-commercial, which meant it was totally free to do anything, no matter how outlandish. It didn't matter if one person came or 20 people came.
Yeah. Because we already talked about the railway siding and you're standing back there, that's when you can take your time.
Because the space is so small, and regardless of the number in the audience, you are virtually perhaps a yard away from an actor. Acting where one projected from a stage was completely impossible.
Down the road. What's the matter?
You can't talk. You went out with Australian girls.
Yes, but I knew where to marry.
But it was soon very clear that it had to be very naturalistic, very low-key.
Never marry an Italian.
Why not?
Because they're like you. And I'd never marry an Italian because this is what they do to their kids, and I'd never do this to my kids.
The idea that the writer was superfluous, that the actors could in fact devise something, it was a theory pursued by certain actors at certain times.
After I'd had a few short plays done, the actors invited me in to write an ending to a play because they wanted to improvise. They said, write us a 10-minute ending and we'll improvise up towards that. So I wrote the ending and they liked that, and I thought, I don't like this situation much, I'd rather write a whole play. So I kept writing backwards and extending that ending 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and they kept being interested in it to So that finally they wanted the whole play. They wanted to know how it started. And they said, oh, that's all right, we'll do the play. So that's how The Coming of Stork got to be written backwards first. It's a method I don't recommend, but it was a way for me to get a play done.
Many of the people involved in the Carlton Theatre at that time were those who were also attempting to pioneer a local Australian film industry to put Australian life, Australian character and social situations and issues on screen. And it was David's first full-length play that interested Tim Birstall and was made into a film.
I tend to work on a film and then a play to give myself a break from either activity because they're two very different types of activity. The true is that film is a story told by pictures, by visual images.
And let's see you do it. Are you ready, Leopard? On your mark. Get set.
Film is difficult for writers because the power balance
Come on, boys.
swings in favour of the producer and director.
Come on, boy.
They dictate often the terms under which you write. So in a sense you can find yourself writing to a vision that they have
How'd it feel?
rather than a vision that you have.
9 5/8.
A lot of our filmmakers see film in terms of one visual image after another, and you plaintively cry, but what about characterization? What about drama? What about plot logic? One very good director said to me, listen, David, I just don't like conflict you know, I'd rather not have the conflict. And I said, well, you know, the Greeks discovered this amazing fact that conflict has something to do with dramatic interest in a play. And you're telling me you want these two young chaps to meet, form an instant friendship, and traipse through a series of stunning visual backdrops together with no development or no differences of opinion, no nothing.
Can you ride, Frank?
Yeah, why?
Just wondered why you didn't try for the light horse.
Didn't want to.
What, are you going to join the infantry?
Not joining anything.
But you got to be in it.
Don't have to if you don't want to.
You got to be.
No, I don't. Free country, haven't you heard?
I'd be ashamed of myself if I didn't fight.
Well, that only proves one thing, that you and I are different. Let's drop it, eh?
I love the exploration of the human personality and the interaction between people and the clashes that occur because of differences in temperament, personality and whatever. And I love the stage because the stage still permits you to explore character. People can reveal more of themselves.